food. So me and my wife will just two of us sitting and eat and drink coffee and
All day
talk
long.
all day long
It sounds good.
and change my kids' nappies in between.
So your son is 8 months old, right?
8 months old. He's massive. Is it? Do we have the picture of him? I think I got a picture of him. This is a little bit old now, but that's him. He's so he's. That's before he had much hair, but it's pretty cute. That was probably 6 months, so he's probably about double the size now. But yeah, Joel's seen him. He's actually bigger than Joel. He's about Joel's size. So that's him. There's some other photos. What else have we got? What else is there?
Yeah, you can I feel like I'm going to fall.
Oh, that's my wife when she was pregnant. That's us on our wedding day. That's before I shaved my hair off. So that's me and my wife at our year 12 formal. So we went to school together. I knew her since I was about 10 or 11.
Wow.
And then, yeah, well, we weren't really friends all the way through high school. My girlfriend dumped me right before the formal. So I asked Hannah to come to the formal with me. And then a few years later, she decided she liked me. That's right, yeah. So that's it. But yeah, chubby cheeks,
You
long
want to
hair.
tell us a little bit
It's
about the
great.
evolution of your hair over the last
The
few years?
evolution.
Yeah. Looks like it's gone through quite a few phases.
It's gone through a lot of phases. That was my mullet phase. I used to have the emo fringe. You know, where you straighten the fringe over your. So I had that one for a while. I graduated to that one. And then I did the quiff. You know, like the big. This guy here, like that, like the quiff. The quiff. Did that one for a while, and then we are doing a youth fundraiser. We did this fundraising campaign called 30K in 30 days. We were raising $30,000 for the church from our youth ministry, which is a cool another story. But as a part of that, we did like a fundraising thing to shave my head. So someone was like, "We'll give you $2,000 if you shave your head." I'm like, "Okay." So off it went, and then I liked it, and I've kept it for a while. And I'm going bald, so that's kind of a part of keeping it short now.
That sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yep, that's it.
So we saw the Avengers yesterday. So
we did.
Just to let everyone know, like who. Don't worry, guys. I'm not that evil. Like, okay, if you haven't watched it in 2 or 3 weeks, you deserve it. Like, that's on you. I will spoil it for you. But it's only been out for a couple of days, so I will have mercy. But who spoiled it for you, Ivan? James spoiled it for you. James. Well, he spoiled The Last Jedi for some people too, apparently. Did you? You didn't?
James. Cheeky James.
Who is still single.
That's a criminal offence.
Now, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but who is your favorite Avenger?
My favourite Avenger is the one who died. And their name is... Nah, I won't.
Do you even have one?
Nah, in all serious... it's Iron Man, obviously. Surely. No? But we just went quiet. Do you not like Iron Man? I love Iron Man. I think he's great. He's so sassy. He's like James. He's like James without a quiff. I just said you're like Iron Man because you're sassy. You're cheeky. Yeah.
So, right. So, well, now we know Iron Man's a favorite Avenger. Well, so I think you were telling us before you were in youth ministry before you're doing Youth Life. So, how many years were you doing youth ministry, and then how many years have you been at Youth Life so far?
Yep. So we did youth ministry for 5 years. So we're leading the youth ministry for 5 years, probably doing it for 10, kind of all up. And then Youth Alive, this is our second year now. Yep. So run it for a year, and this is our second year. Yep.
So like when you say 10 and 5 years, meaning like maybe like 5 years you were on staff as a youth pastor, and the other 5 like as a youth leader. And
yeah, just youth leader doing whatever needed to be done.
Cool. So what would you say, like maybe before you became a youth pastor? I mean, obviously over the last like 5 to 10 years, you've seen lots of stuff. You've done lots of cool things and great things, but I'm sure there's also like some stuff that you wish you hadn't done, like the chocolate and the pee. But yes. What's one thing, I guess, that you wish someone had told you before you started youth ministry?
before I started as a youth leader or as a youth pastor?
Well, either one, I guess. Whatever works for you.
I reckon. Let me think about that for a second. I reckon when it comes to, I probably felt a lot of the time going through it. I reckon it probably wasn't so much what do I wish someone told me. I probably wish it was probably more so. So I probably led out of a place of perhaps the way I wish I'd been led. So a lot of probably what I wish happened more, and probably what I'm so intentional on and love now, is just investing into people's lives and being in their world as much as you possibly can, and just discipling them into becoming who God's called them to be, and not in this like clinical here's the checklist of things that you've got to tick off to be a great leader, but actually just being around people enough to have a massive impact on their life. So I probably thought leadership was a lot to do with your capacity to organise things, or your capacity to preach, or your capacity to to lead a large group of people. But my definition of leadership would be completely different to that. I think leadership is building people. So I wish someone had just said, Sam, all of those things are great, and you got to learn all of those things, but the most important thing you could know is that if you build people, everything else will get built with it. That's what I wish someone had told me. Because here's the thing, when you build people, great youth ministries get built. When you build people, great movements get built, but it starts with building people. Like my conviction now is I want everyone in my life to be bigger because they're around me. I want them to feel like after they leave a conversation with me or time with me, they feel bigger as a person. Because I think if we can build big people, we're big-spirited, have big faith, big passion, big capacity, I reckon that's how we change the world. So I wish I'd known more about building people rather than building programs before I came into it.
No, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's true. I think too, part of it is, I mean, when you're talking about like building people and like raising leaders and stuff.
Yes.
I mean, yes, youth ministries programs and outreaches and stuff.
Hey.
And all that kind of stuff. But as you're looking to build people and build leaders, how much would you say, like when you're trying to raise someone as a leader, maybe even for yourself, how much of leadership is kind of like personality based? Like some people just are more charismatic, more outgoing, they easily draw people, and how much of it is like a training and a discipleship and like a taught thing?
I don't think it is necessarily personality based. And there'll probably be some people who debate with me on this one, but I think different spaces or spheres of leadership need different personalities, right? So generally speaking, like if you're called to preach, you're probably going to be more charismatic as a rule. Not even general, like not always, but that tends to happen. That's probably the space where that person's going to fly the best, right? But there are so many, like I think this is my funny thing, is I think because people think I can talk good through a microphone, that means I'm a good leader. It's so not true. Your leadership gift and your speaking or communication gift are completely disconnected in my mind. So some of the best leaders I know will never be holding a microphone in their hand. Some of the best leaders I know will never be up the front leading a massive room of people in worship. You know what I mean? Some of the best leaders I know are introverted, or some of the best leaders I know don't like being up the front. And I don't think that has any bearing or any capacity on your ability to be a great leader. I think leadership is leading and building people. So can anyone lead and build people? Yes. Can you do that in varying degrees of goodness or effectiveness? Yes. So I think anyone can be trained in how to build people. You know what I mean? And we all have different capacities and different abilities to do that in different spheres, but I think it's a wide open space for anyone. Yeah,
that's true. I think sometimes when we're looking for a leader, we tend to, you're looking for the guy that can, like the freak of nature, the guy that can lead worship and service lead and run the games and do the ops, and we all wish we could buy 10 more of those guys from like every youth ministry. But sometimes, like what you're saying, I think the most effective leadership that comes out from these guys, sometimes it's in ways that you may never even be able to contain on one stage or in a room, and that different personalities will manifest. God's going to use different personalities in different ways to be effective in that kind of leadership, I guess.
And I reckon the most charismatic ones who attract the most attention are normally the least organised, worst capacity people out. Like, that's just what I've found. Like, I mean, most of our incredible worship leaders, they're one-trick pony. That's it. you know, like, or even me, like I can speak really well and do a couple of those things. But I was telling you yesterday, it was like two things I'm good at, and everything else I'm really bad at. So I got to surround myself with people who have great capacities in those areas where I'm not strong, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool thing you said there, because I think sometimes, especially maybe a bit of an Asian context, but as a leader, you feel like you've always got to know more than the people you're leading. Sometimes you feel a pressure where, like, as a leader, I've always got to be better than the guys that I'm leading, right? If I'm not better at you at this, then how can I lead you in this? If I'm not, if my gifting doesn't exceed yours, then how can I lead you in that? But what you're saying, and I think it's really true, is that, like, it's okay to have weaknesses as a leader. It's okay to not be great at everything, but to learn, one is to learn how to surround yourself with people who are good at those things, but to also be secure enough in your leadership that you're not afraid that, like, oh, this person has a bigger personality than me, or this person's more gifted than me, and to be afraid to release those people. So maybe you want to tell us a little bit about have you had any kind of situations where it is like that, where someone is better than you, someone is like more gifted or has a higher ability than you, and how do you like work on like releasing them while still being like secure in leadership?
Well, I think it, and you're totally right. It has to come from a place of security. Like, if you're insecure, you are going to box and put a lid on the capacity of all the people around you, because you're not going to want them to succeed past you. And so insecurity prevents ministries from growing, churches from growing, because your insecurity is forcing people to stay small in their capacity so that they don't surpass you. So one person, like, so Tom in this room, right? His capacity to run, so Tom runs our operations for Youth Alive. His capacity to think through those systems, to work out those teams and how all of that structured and managed is actually far greater than mine. But if I was in a place of, if I was insecure and I felt like I had to have my finger on that pulse and control all those things, I guarantee you our conferences would be half the size. Our ability would be half what it is, because my security wouldn't let him rise and actually take that position. So I think when it comes to, a lot of the time as leaders, we want all of these principles and processes and all this stuff laid out to us, and all of that is great. But man, you've got to have your identity rooted in Christ. You've got to know who you are and who you're not, because unless you're secure in Christ and your identity in Him, you're not actually going to be free to lead people effectively. You know what I mean? I want Tom's capacity to continue to grow and exceed mine in that area, to the point where I don't even understand what's going on there. That's actually what I want to happen, because it's not about building me, it's about building the kingdom. So if my object of ministry is that I look good, right? Then we're going to be prevented from extending our reach, from growing and influencing a lot of people. But if my heart and my default is that the kingdom grows, right? That we reach more people than we could have reached, that we do more than we could have done, but that people get saved and discipled and led into their thousands. If that's my goal, right? Then I'm going to raise and release people, you know what I mean? As many of them as I can, to exceed me in all these areas, so that this thing can keep growing. And I just stay confident in what God's called me to do. That'll be my answer to that.
No, that's
great question.
And I think even what you guys, or what you were doing at schools, even through like Jesse and the different things you were talking about, like that too is like a thing about, you've got to be secure in leadership, because like, okay, this kid, he's doing his own thing in school. He's got like 120 kids going there.
Yes.
Like, as a leader, you can be tempted to be like, oh no, but I've got to be the source of where all the salvation is. I've got to be the guy who's leading everyone to Christ. Like, and if you're doing that, I've got to find a way to fit myself into that, or work my way into that. But from what you're saying, and so true, that as leaders, we need to be willing to just release people in the gifting and the arena that God has for them, because there are people that they can speak to, that they can reach, that they can touch, that will never have the opportunity to do that.
Totally, man. Yeah. And even with Schools Revolution now, like that obviously started in our youth ministry, and I was leading him and helping him with that. But he's out of school now. He's a Youth Alive Academy student, so he's studying in our Leadership Academy. And I've just felt, even over the last few months, that I need to just release Schools Revolution right out into his hands, and just get behind him again to take this to the nation. You know what I mean? And so, but I feel comfortable and secure enough for him to be that front man for that. Like, I'm wanting to move him to the front of that space, you know what I mean, and allow him to have the room to grow and become and emerge into a great leader. Brian Houston from Hillsong has this incredible quote that I just never forget. He says, if you want to raise giants, you've got to raise the ceiling. And that's the truth. Like if the ceiling of our ministry and of our leadership is low because of insecurity, we're never going to raise giants. We've got to be pushing that ceiling higher and higher and higher so that people, big personality, big capacity people, right, are in our midst, right? I don't want people to feel like they can only go so far under my leadership, because once they get to this level of once they get this big internally, they have to go somewhere else because they can't be under my leadership. I want to be the kind of leader where you can get infinitely big, where your dreams can come true, where everything can happen without you feeling like you have to go somewhere else, right? Because there's a security and a safety in my leadership that allows you to become all that God's called you to be. That's what I want for everyone in my environment.
No, that's so good.
Yep.
That's so good.
Yep.
Right. I think too, like, I mean, when you're talking about like raising leaders, and especially you're talking about like raising high capacity guys, and bringing up to a new level and letting them just like expressing the gift and all that. How do you identify, or how do you like? Is there a certain thing you look out for? Is there a certain thing you do where it helps you identify like gifting in certain leaders, and what do you do? Because I mean, we talked about different kind of personalities. There's also heaps of different kinds of giftings. But what do you do to identify gifts in different people and raise up and release like these different giftings?
Yeah. So I think like there's probably two sides to that coin.
Yeah.
So the first one would be there's a base level of things that I'm looking for in any leader, which if they don't have, that automatically stops them from would stop me from seeing anything more in their future for now. And so the couple of those things would be teachability. I want them to be leaning in, asking questions. I want them to have a posture of, I'm here to learn, I'm here to grow, because I think the moment you lose that is the moment you're done, and you might as well just throw in the towel and say, see you later, because if you stop growing, then you've stopped being effective. And if you can't even start from a place of teachability, like what hope do you have in 10 years? So that's the biggest thing I'm looking for. But the other thing I'm looking for is I'm looking for DNA. I'm looking for cultural similarity. I'm looking for people that get what I'm going after instinctively. So there's some things I'm happy to train you in, and some things I'm happy to teach you in. There's other things if you either have it or you don't. I don't know how to describe this. I don't even know how to put language around it. But there are some people, they've got the right gifts, they've got the right boxes, they've got the right teachability, but I probably still wouldn't invest everything into them because I feel like there's not a fit in our DNA. We don't have the chemistry. They don't naturally align with what I'm going after. See, the thing is with a guy like Tom is I feel like I can release something to Tom and he instinctively knows what I want. And he gets what I'm trying to build, so he instinctively outworks that. But there's some guys who would have maybe the same base level ingredients of what's in Tom, but I couldn't release that to them because we don't have the same DNA, chemistry, or culture. It's not right or wrong. They've just got, maybe they belong in a different church, or maybe they belong trying to build something differently, but it's not our DNA. It's not our way of doing things. It's not our heart, And I don't think you can necessarily transmit some of those things person to person. Some people, they walk in and they have it or they don't. And I'm going to invest based on that. But I'm quite intuitive. So I know this sounds very airy-fairy, but I've learned to trust this more and more over the years. I get a strong feeling in my gut about people when it comes to whether they're the one or not, and pretty well it's always been right. And so that's just a part of how God's wired me. My wife is completely different. She's the opposite of intuitive. So Hannah's very logical. I'm gonna write this down. I know the pros and the cons. I can see this through. She's like a practical thinker. I'm very intuitive. So I've learned to trust and put language around my intuition, but mixed with her ability to break things down logically and put it on paper, it's a good kind of mix, right? So we have a lot of debates. Yeah. So, but I think if you're close enough to someone, I want you to smell like me. Right? So if I'm wearing aftershave and I hug you, right, and I've just sprayed it on, you're gonna smell like me, because you've been around me, right? And so the biggest thing is, it's not about replicating myself, it's about the DNA of what we're carrying and seeing that continue everywhere. And one of the funniest things that was ever said to me, there was a youth pastor came up to me, this is before we're running Youth Alive, we're just a local youth pastor, and this youth pastor came up to me at a leaders event. It was at a Youth Alive leaders event, and he came up to me and he said, "Oh, I met some of your leaders." And I said, "Oh, really? Which ones did you meet?" And he goes, "This one, this one, this one." I'm like, "How do you know they were How'd you know about our leaders? Did they tell you? And he's like, no, I just knew they were your leaders by the way they talked, by the way they acted, by the way they carried themselves. I could tell that they were on your team. They didn't tell me. I just knew they were on your team, right? Because there's a shared DNA, an attitude, a culture, a language that we want to protect. And I'm not gonna pour into someone who's not carrying that, because maybe they should be in a different team or somewhere else, you know? Yeah.
So you talking about DNA and culture, and I think a big part of, I guess, when you were youth pastor, that culture was like culture of like outreach, reaching out, and making sure that, I mean, yeah, the kids are getting saved in school and all that, but then making sure that when they come to youth ministry, it's a place that's like welcoming for them, it's comfortable for them, they won't feel like, oh, I'm the kid from school and like here's everyone else. So what were some of the things, I guess, that you guys did to build like an environment or an atmosphere that was comfortable for all these school kids who maybe have no concept of church, or they don't know that I'm supposed to raise my hands in worship, or they don't know that I'm not supposed to swear in church, or all that kind of stuff. Yeah. How do you create an environment, an atmosphere that was comfortable for them to come in and feel like, hey, this is home, I can be here?
I'll give you a story about one of those kids. So one of them came in. I remember it was their first time I was ever praying for them. They were from a really rough home. So the place where we did youth ministry was really rough, like ghetto, drugs, alcohol abuse, broken families, like this kind of environment. And so for them, church wasn't even like a thought. It wasn't. I don't even know what church is. That's where a lot of these guys coming in were at. So I remember praying for this young person after the service, and it was their first time ever getting prayed for. And I was praying for them, and they encountered the presence of God. They'd never ever felt the presence of God before. And they opened their eyes. They looked at me. And they said, "What the F was that?" And I remember I just cracked up laughing, because I'm like, this kid has no idea that you can't swear in church, but he's having a real encounter with God and feels comfortable enough here that he's not going to get judged by me, to actually just authentically be himself. So obviously we would curb that and speak into that. We wouldn't want people dropping F-bombs in our youth ministry week to week. But what I loved was that guy felt like he could be himself with all of his junk and all of his baggage, right, in that environment, and say that to me and feel like I wouldn't judge him. So I felt like that was a good end product of probably some things that we worked towards over a year. So I was telling Joel and some of his key leaders this last night, but we had the biggest shift for us when it came to creating this environment really started within our leadership team and then leaked down into our young people. But we really felt that, we had a youth ministry of church kids essentially, and a few of the rougher guys would come in and we would just feel like they were annoying. It's like, why are you talking during the message? Like, shut up, Why aren't you worshipping like we worship? Why are you making noise? Why are you punching each other in the car park? We don't love you. You just annoy us. Like, we just want you to come in line, do what we're doing, and just be like us. And so we dress it up in Christian language and say, oh yeah, we love these people. They're amazing, blah, blah, blah. But at our root, in our heart, I don't think we really did. And I remember one night we were in our living room, and I just had this burden about it all day, and just been feeling like, man, something's got to change here. And basically, like, I turned to the team and flat out confessed, I don't think I love these young people. I think I say that I love them. I think we say that we love them, but I think when we say we love them, what we actually want is them just to do what we're doing and just not muck around. And we've got to repent tonight of our lack of love for these young people, because if we don't love them, there's no way our other young people in our youth ministry are going to love them. So that night in our living room, we were all in tears, we were crying and praying and basically repenting to God of not loving these broken young people like we should. And there was some key young people in that room that night who saw that. They weren't leaders, but there were some key young people who were in that meeting who saw that. And something fundamentally shifted in their heart that night, where they started realizing that youth ministry wasn't for them, it was for the lost people. And that is the critical shift, is when your young people, your saved Christian young people, start realizing that youth ministry doesn't exist for them, it exists for the lost. That's when the atmosphere changes. Yeah. Because if they're convinced that this is their club where they come on a Friday night or a Saturday night or whenever you do youth, and they hang out with their friends and it's about them building their little clique and their little environment, this is our little Christian thing, of course when someone who looks strange walks in, they're going to feel like an outsider. Of course, when someone who doesn't look like they look walks in, they're going to feel like an outsider. Why? Because well, this is our thing. What are you doing in our home? So what we want to do is we want to reshape our hearts as leaders, number one, to say, hold on, do we really want the kind of young people we're praying God will give us? Are we really willing to love them and disciple them and invest in them? And we've got to get our hearts in that place. But secondly, do we tell our young people that this exists for them, or do we tell them it exists for the lost? Because that is the fundamental shift that will determine how they treat people. Because if you're coming in as an outsider to my home and I'm judging you and being like, well, what are you doing here? They're not going to come back. But the moment our young people get a revelation of the fact that we are actually here for the lost, that church on Sunday, that's for me, but youth tonight, right? This is outreach. This exists for them. We are bringing our friends in. Anyone who walks through that door, we're going to love them. I'm on mission. I'm a leader. I'm called by God. I'm going to love this young person. I'm going to bring him into my group. I'm going to play basketball with him in the car park. I'm going to do whatever it takes. As soon as that mindset starts to shift, suddenly you have a culture of inclusivity where anyone feels like they can come in, and you actually start retaining the new people that are coming into your youth ministry rather than getting them walking in and leaving the next week. So you've got to reshape from the inside out our hearts as leaders and then the hearts of our young people. And you can't do that without specifically speaking into it and developing language around it and constantly celebrating new people above everything else. Yeah.
So basically, when you're talking about, you're saying like it's a shift in the culture that started from something that God did in you guys' hearts. And then that began to change the messaging, change the language that you use, and ultimately all that builds up into changing the culture as well.
Yeah.
So were there specific things that you had to do, or maybe even like specific conversations you had to have with certain leaders to say like, hey, this week, or every week, I need you to do this, or were there certain even program things that flowed out of that change that God brought in your hearts that helped you to shift the culture?
Yeah, that's really good. So I think, so it is from the heart inside out, and then there's the practical application of keeping that going. One thing I was talking about last night was about changing our language as leaders as to what we speak about with our young people, because what the questions you ask them is an indicator of what you value and what you prioritize. So if I'm asking you if you've read your Bible this week, that tells the young person, okay, my leader values me reading my Bible, which is great. We want them to do that. If I'm asking them, how much have you prayed this week? That's placing value on prayer. But if I'm asking that young person and my leaders are set up and we've had the conversation to be asking young people, hey, who are you praying for to come to youth? Hey, who are you bringing to youth this week? Not only that, but okay, now we're at youth. There's young people walking in the door. Like, are we just hoping that they find someone to talk to? Or have my leaders been trained and schooled up to look out for those ones that come in, that are alone, that are sitting by themselves, that are isolated, and bringing them into the fold? So I think the best system we had set up, which really organically created a... we didn't have any problems with this area because of this, and it was a bit of an accident. I'm not even going to say it's strategic, but on the flip side of it, it looked really strategic, and we realised that there was a lot of good wins to it. So all of our small groups, like your small groups are actually small groups. Our small groups weren't small. They were like 30 or 40 young people. So it was like, you guys are like awesome with your 6 people small groups that are real small groups. But we had fake small groups, and I'm kidding. But those teams, those small groups also were the teams that we'd use to compete in games and all of these other things. And so our leaders had a real, subtle, competitive undertone to making sure that their group was growing, so that they win the games all the time. So what would happen is a young person would walk in the door, and I kid you not, they just get mobbed by our leaders, because they all want them in their group, right? Because they're like, if this thing keeps growing, we're going to dominate, right, the game system. And so that was kind of like a fun little way that actually helped us engage everyone, because everyone wanted their zone to be growing. So it was actually like a fun way of getting people connected and involved. And that culture of family within those groups just made it super easy for people to connect, So we'd do... in those small groups, we wouldn't just do Bible studies, we'd do social activities. They'd go out and have fun together. They'd go out to a movie every few weeks. So they'd go out to, do you have those indoor trampoline places? Singapore, that kind of thing. Just lots of like life activities together that would assimilate them into the youth ministry. And the thing is because we were running a large youth ministry, there's some things that small youth ministries can do that bigger youth ministries can't. Like, going out and doing bowling together, or going out to the movies, or going out to any of these things. Once you kind of even probably get past 50, it's really, really difficult to start doing those things. But that's where we started doing all of those social activities in those small groups. So it would mean that essentially, the only time they would be, like I said, being at church wouldn't be the only time they were in that small group. They'd be going out and doing those social activities and assimilating them in on as many different angles as we possibly could, in the space of a month.
So there's like, there were like the culture shifts like within the service itself, okay, that made them feel welcome. But as you're talking, you're also saying that like basically it's 24/7. You're not just trying to integrate them into your church culture, but they become part of your life.
Yeah,
like,
we just say family.
Yeah.
So the word that God gave me was family. So we were constantly trying to build family. And again, talking before about getting these ideas from heaven, that sounds so simple, but I knew that was a word from God because our city was a familyless city. Like, most of our young people were from broken homes. Most of them, their parents were divorced. Most of them were from, these environments. So to actually build authentic family was one of the most compelling things we could possibly do in that environment. So that's why, like, for us, our biggest growth avenue wasn't from having a sexy worship service, because for them that's just like, well, I don't know, I could go down the road and do that at a concert. But if we can build family, that's going to attract them to an incredible degree, because we're giving them something they haven't got anywhere else. So one of the best nights we ever did, we did it once a year, we did it annually. We used to do this thing called our family Christmas dinner, and it was like the cheesiest thing ever. We would just roll out all these trestle tables, and a bunch of ladies from the church would cook a Christmas meal, right? For our young people. So we'd feed them all, literally hundreds of young people all having a 3-course meal outside in the Australian summer. I'll tell you, it was one of the most special experiences that we had on our calendar, because we were giving them something in their life that no one else was giving them. We were actually giving them, most of them had never had a sit-down meal, right, with their family. And so here we are building an environment where we're sitting down having this beautiful meal together, getting loved on, and building family together, and creating this culture and this environment of family that just grew incredibly. So you're not going to see like have a family Christmas dinner on like a youth ministry website. Yeah. But that was a breakthrough idea and a breakthrough thing that helped build our youth ministry incredibly, because we were giving them something that they were desperately crying out for and they desperately needed. So that's why I think we've got to think outside the box and consistently be seeking God for what these young people in this area really need, what they're crying out for, Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. I think as leaders, we've got to be ready. I mean, we're asking God for the harvest, we're asking God for fresh ideas, we're asking God for innovation, creativity, but we've got to be willing to say, I'm willing to have my life change to accommodate these things. Because I don't know how you felt when you had your baby, but like when we had our baby, I felt like our life just like, it completely changed. My schedule wasn't my schedule anymore. My sleep wasn't my sleep anymore, and neither was my wife's. And everything changed when this new thing came into our lives. Yeah. And sometimes as youth leaders or as youth pastors, we can kind of get into a space where I want God to do this, and I want to see new people come in, and I want God to change it. I want to harvest, but I want my life to stay the same. I want to have the same number of hours of sleep. I want to go to the same coffee places. I want to have the same number of working hours. I want to have the same team of leaders. I want to have the same number of free nights I have a week. But we got to realize that at some point when you're asking God to do something crazy in your youth ministry, when you're asking God to bring in these people, your life is going to change. The people you hang out with are going to change. Your schedule hours are going to change. Your family life is going to look a little bit different. To make room for what God wants to do in your lives, right? And I think that's a heap of wisdom from Pastor Sam here today, and we've learned heaps from you. So would you guys once again just give him a hand? Thank you so much for that.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Hey, listen. Here's what we're gonna do. You can sit down, so you don't have to be awkwardly next to me while I give you. Or you want to stay? You can stay. What we'll do is this. We've got to shuffle the schedule around a bit. So what we'll do is we'll go straight. I was seeing how long you would stay. But we'll mess with the schedule a bit. What we'll do right now is we'll quickly run into like the main session that we had planned earlier, just to touch base on that part about advancing and evaluating goals. And after that, we'll quickly break out into the breakout workshops in different rooms where we'll hit the 3 topics that we're talking about. After that, at about 12:10 time, we'll come back together. We'll have lunch, hang out, and then we'll call it a day. Is that okay? All right, so we're going to jump straight into the next thing. So go ahead and if you want to write things down, you can go ahead and write things down. But today, we were going to talk about basically evaluating and advancing goals in youth ministry. And a lot of the things that Pastor Sam has shared, if you sit down and just kind of work it, actually all come toward and all built towards evaluating and advancing goals. I mean, what he was talking about, facing frustration, what he was talking about, innovation and just fresh ideas and inspiration, all that. One is sometimes you evaluate, you get frustrated, and then you have to innovate, right? But part of it too is, hey, if you want to reach your goals, if you want to reach higher goals than ever before, if you want to go to new places that you've never been before, you have to innovate. Like what he was saying, you have to get fresh ideas from God. You have to change the way that you do certain things if you want to reach goals that you've never reached before. And even as we're talking about, like, even just doing this interview and talking about, like, how do we change culture, how do we, some of those things, like raising leaders, and some of those things are the goals that you've been setting. Hey, we want to have a culture that's more inclusive. Hey, we want to raise X number of leaders. We want to do X number of things. And so today, I just want to give you a few quick thoughts about those things, and hopefully it's something that's helpful to you, something you can take back and use in your own ways, and help you guys move toward the goals that you've set for youth ministry. So how many of you have set some kind of goal for this year? I want to put your hand in there. You set some kind of goal for this year. Yep, some kind of goal, some kind of direction for youth ministry. And so you love it when you hit goals. You love it when you hit goals. Yeah, I love it when we hit a goal, when we can celebrate and go like, hey, we nailed it, we got it. And then sometimes when we don't hit goals, we're like, what do we do now, right? Like, do we pretend like the goal didn't exist? Do we kind of forget about the goal? Do we admit to everyone, hey, we set for 50, but we only hit 20, we failed? How do we respond, right? How do we deal with goals that we set? And so I know last year we ran an Elevate workshop where Pastor Jeremy talked about setting goals in a spirit-led manner, about having God speak to you about, how do you set, whether it's like number goals or different things, and how do you set goals for that? And I think he showed you guys like different spreadsheets and tracking things and all that we use to track goals and to make sure that our goals are progressing. And so I think he probably talked to about setting goals that are concrete, that are quantifiable, that you can measure, that you can track, so you know how you're doing. And so today, I just want to take a quick minute just to talk about how you advance those goals that you set, how you break these goals down for your young people, and also how do we evaluate these goals and how do we respond based on how we're doing. So one of the most important things that we do as youth leaders and youth pastors is that we need to learn how to break down vision for our people. Right, so how many of you have a vision for youth ministry? Well, you have vision for youth ministry, yeah? Right, and see, one of the things I love about Jesus was the boss at breaking down vision. Jesus was the boss. He said, hey, we're going to win the world, right? Go in the world and make disciples of all nations. But he was able to break that down for the people who were serving under him, his disciples. One good example we see is in John chapter 6. This is where Jesus feeds the 5,000, right? They say it's 5,000 men, so it could have been another 5,000 women and another 10,000 kids or whatever. It could have been anywhere from 5 to maybe 15 to 20,000 people in that place. And as we read the story in John, I'm not going to read the passage now. You guys can go back and read it on your own. But in John chapter 6, he and Philip have this convo where if you read all the other versions of it in the different gospels, the disciples come to Jesus. Oh my gosh, how are we going to feed these people? Jesus is like, you give them something to eat, right? He tries to put the responsibility on them, and then they come up with all these reasons. Oh, there's not enough money, the food's too far away, this and that. And in this conversation that he has with Philip, the Bible puts it this way. It says, Jesus asked Philip, how are we going to feed them? But then it also says that, but he was asking because he was testing Philip because he knew what he was already going to do, right? But see, here in this moment, Jesus has a vision to feed all these people here. Jesus has a vision for this miracle to take place, for this provision to take place for 5,000 men and 15, 20,000 kids and women to get fed. And so what he's doing here is he's trying to get Philip to catch this vision that he's got. He's trying to get Philip to catch this thing that he wants to do. I want to feed 5, 10, 15, 20,000 people. And obviously we see the disciples, right? I mean, we give them a lot of stick for it. We make fun of the disciples a lot for it, but they're trying to escape. Oh, there's no money in this and that. They're trying to get out of this thing that Jesus is trying to put on them. See, but Jesus doesn't just stop there and go like, oh, if you can't get the vision, fine, I'm done with you. And let me move on, find new disciples. No. See, Jesus begins to get the disciples, hey, get them to sit down in groups of 50, right? Jesus does that. And then Jesus gets all these people, disciples to come and, okay, now give me the bread.